welcome to the Logosphere. This is Chris Stites, here as always with J.D. Roof.
Hello, good evening.
And this evening we're going to talk about violence.
Why?
I don't know, we're both curious, I think, at least I am, about the appeal of violence. Why is it that people like violent things? Why is it that little boys like to, blow up snakes with firecrackers? Why is it that...
I was one of those boys too.
Yeah.
I took super glue, because it's real flammable, or some kind of glue.
I think there's an idea out there that, if children harm animals, it's evidence that they're going to grow up to become a serial killer.
Right, the Jeffrey Dahmer thing.
Yeah,
because he was dissecting like farming or little squirrels and stuff in his shed.
If that were true, we'd probably have a lot more serial killers.
Yeah, but there is a draw to that, to watching death. But I was almost thinking, like, I think it almost ties into like watching sports, right? Like you think of gladiators, you think of the Colosseum, and the Romans loved that shit. The Romans would flock to that, just like anybody flocks to like a violent movie. But I think there's something about us being drawn to action, right? To that, even though football, when you're watching football, you're basically watching gladiators just go crush each. I mean, when you're on a football team, I never was on a football team. I was a wrestler, but when you get into that mode, it's like you're gonna go and kill this dude. Like they say that, like, we're going to war. We're gonna go kill these motherfuckers. Like, let's go. And there's an audience that is like along the ride with them, right? Like it's almost like we just love watching action. So I think that ties into it.
Football's obviously a pseudo militaristic thing, right? It's very warlike. The aggression is a big part of it.
Very real.
Yeah.
You see injuries, you see guys, just getting full, tackled.
And even within that, it's controversial. I've got, a nephew who's played football growing up. He's a little kid.
Yeah.
And now it's getting to the point where they're starting to tackle, and dad wants him to keep doing it and mom wants him to stop.
Right.
So they have to hash it out as parents. Mom says it's unsafe and that it's not good for his future. He could get a traumatic brain injury. Look at the studies. And dad says, I don't care about the studies. I want a warrior. Basically, he doesn't put it that way. He said it'll be good for his self-esteem or,
A confidence builder.
Yeah.
Going and taking people's heads off.
Yeah.
I mean, there also is that kind of, I don't know if it's a philosophy, but it's this idea that we're all offsprings of the victors, right? You just remove yourself a couple hundred years, and our great-great-grandfathers or our great-great-great-grandfathers were running across fields with axes, screaming and hacking each other apart. And we're the offspring of the winners of that. Have you ever heard that? There's some philosopher that goes around. He's one of these motivational speaker guys, and he goes and he motivates like the team, the management team or whatever of your company, and he's like, look, stop resting on your shit. This is who you are. You're the offspring of the winners.
Probably, for most of history, for most species on Earth, aggression equates survival. Right,
and that ties into the Nietzsche, analysis of the like the true nobility of the pagan. It's like might is right. It's power is right.
Yeah,
it's not what you think or what you you hurt my village, or you took my water. It's like, no, whoever is right is the one that goes and takes the village, takes the one, just takes over, and that's it.
And learning how to, or having a culture that praises that type of strength,
cheers it on,
and
eats popcorn and hot dogs.
Now we have a culture that arguably benefits from the spoils of war while simultaneously, criticizing the means.
Yeah, and what the interesting thing is, I mean, we were kind of talking about this before when we were at dinner, but just the whole, Hamas, Israel thing. Like when we actually see gruesome, like real war stuff, it is gruesome. There is a visceral reaction you get when you see like a kid or, something horrendous happening. There's not an arena. There's not, you know what I mean? There's no rules. It's just absolute, chaos and evil.
Do you think most people are drawn to seeing that type of thing? Given the option, what do you think? Out of 100 people, how many people would, want to take a look?
Or look away.
Or who would really not want to see it because they would be afraid of the memory that it would install in their brain? Or people that morbidly would be curious to see? Do you think there's a mix?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went through that one HBO series again, The Pacific. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
So it's about, and this is recently, this is the last couple of days, like the last 2 weeks, I've been watching that series on and off. It's extremely violent. It's a war epic, HBO miniseries, 9 episodes, and it's all about like Iwo Jima and when the Marines went over as the response to Pearl Harbor, they go and they start island hopping and trying to kind of eradicate the Japanese, out. And there's this scene, I think it was a famous battle, it's called Alligator Creek. And there's this one bridge and the Japanese are trying to the Marines are trying to get across and the Japanese are trying to get across. And it's like a stalemate for a little bit. And there's this one bridge that these Japanese guys just come running out, right? And they just get mowed down. I mean, all night long into the next day, there's bodies piling up, to the point where almost like the scene in 300 where the 300 Spartans pack up the Persians as a wall because there's so many dead ones,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. And it's just this gruesome, insane scene. And you're watching both the Japanese guys, the bravery of them, how they just will not give up. And they're running into these crazy machine guns. And then you see the Marines and you see this change that they have into becoming they're just Marines. And now they're changing into almost like animals, like savages, right? And at the end of it made me cry. And I've seen this before, but for some reason it got through to me. That last Japanese guy comes running out and he pulls out a samurai sword. And he comes running across the creek, and all the Marines are kind of laughing at him, what are you gonna do, dude? And they're taking belly shots at him. There's a moment in that. It's a really good series. I mean, if you're into war epics, it's really well made, right? HBO, and it's wow. I mean, I'm sitting there watching that alone.
Is he taking the shots, and he's
just taking the shots, and then eventually
he's just going forward.
Coming forward. And he's just the feet. And he's just it's just so it's so gnarly, and you can see it kind of gets through to some of the Marines that are standing there taking kind of belly shots at him, and finally they kind of there's
realize that they're the cowards there.
Yeah, and and one of them kind of takes mercy and just blasts him in the head or something like that, shoots him right in the heart and kills him. But it's this is what you're up against. Yeah. This is violence.
Do you think women are much less impressed by that type of scene, just temperamentally?
Well, Truth is a woman, and we're just fighting over it,
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? What is that thing where they say there's a bad woman will pit two guys against each other, don't get involved with her because she's trouble, and it's usually something to do with that, she's dating one guy, maybe breaks up with him real quick and is dating his friend or something, and they pit against each other. And there's that idea that the woman gets off on that a little bit, to see these dudes go at it. And
to see, it's a bit of a stereotype as well that, the scene of, two men fighting over a female, and then, one of them, takes the other guy out.
Yeah.
And she, and she likes it.
Yeah. Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah. She wants to see that happen, which is what you're saying, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, but it's funny. I think men are more drawn to that because I can speak for, my family. When I see my wife watch those kind of things, she can only take so much of it.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, this is enough. Now what I'm talking about with the Pacific, it's a 9 series in depth, they go island to island. I mean, it's brutal all the way up until the bomb happens, right? And you're just seeing it ends, the last episode is you see these Japanese women coming with babies that have grenades and they come oh, help me. And then boom, they kill a bunch of people. A lot like the stuff they saw in Vietnam and stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so horrendous.
Yeah.
But like here I am sitting there fucking eating popcorn like, oh.
I feel so alive to see that.
Why?
I said Claire and I watched a really fantastic horror film the other day. It's called Talk to Me. It's this new Australian horror film.
Oh, really?
A24 Studios, and it's
and they make good
stuff, and it was really engaging. And it's the most scared I've seen her during a movie that we've watched together. And some of the scenes that really got gnarly. It was interesting to watch that, and we're just two people, but the difference in our reaction.
Yeah.
She got to the point where she could hardly tolerate it.
Right.
And I would smile.
Yeah, it's
some of
almost
these
like
scenes
you're
got so gnarly. My eyes would open up wide, and I was just, I was so impressed with how much they could twist the knife and how sharp the teeth were on the mind of whoever was creating it,
and the gore and the I mean, one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen is The Witch.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like, I don't know what it is because like nothing really happens until the end, right?
And Claire saw that one and she wasn't too impressed by it. I think The Witch is great too.
Right.
It's the vibe. It's just
it just screws with you.
Yeah.
It just F's with your head. And I almost had to turn it off because I was just like, I can't handle this anymore. This is just too crazy. Because there's like, whenever there's little kids involved and stuff, you get, it changes.
And they're alone and there's that just kind of occult nature to it.
And it's supposed to take place in America and the Salem witch trials and all that crap, right? But but there's something like,
and you never really see you
never really, you see her at the end. You see the crazy lady that is like eating the kids or something, right? But
it's the
spoiler alert.
There is a good. Is another. We're going into an interesting direction with this, but
yeah, we
are. I noticed this with the Alien movie series.
The original Alien?
Well, there's all the different aliens, and they're still making them, and there's been some that have been made recently. And the most recent ones, they have all of the benefits of the most, high-tech CGI that money can buy.
Right.
So when you see that alien, it's like up close.
It's real.
It's gruesome.
Yeah.
You see every fine detail of it. The first Alien movie is just a guy in a suit. So they had to be really creative and they had to show you as little as possible.
Yeah.
And there's something that to me is much more ominous about that than the full muscular, drooling, just loud, in your face, high definition alien than the guy in the suit in the shadows. It's more psychological.
Yeah.
And there's something about it's almost like a striptease, the more you reveal, the trick is sort of lost. There's an art to the
revealing. It's almost a little bit like the mystery box thing that J.J. Abrams says, but I think he pulls that way too far.
What does he say?
It's just this idea that there's always this like mystery, like and it never really gets fully revealed. So you're always kind of led on, like what's that? Like what's that TV series he made, Lost? And there's like the polar bear, and you never get. It's like this polar bear comes and just munches somebody, and then it just goes on a tropical island, and you just like never get an explanation.
He might have taken that good theory a little too far.
A little too far, because he hasn't aged well with I think his movie making. I used to be a big fan of his, and I'm not so much anymore. But so we're kind of going into horror, right? This because the suspense is what captures you, obviously, in a war scene, right? But there's also this like, it's like the thing with the relationship when you have an unhealthy attachment, right? It's like, but like, what was the thing you did? You went like this, like that's
come here but stay away.
Come here but stay away.
Yeah.
You get that feeling when you're watching like extreme violence on a, like Gladiator is a great example. Like you want him to succeed, right? His family's murdered, right? So there's this arc.
The justice, the whole thing is set up there, so. We're rooting for him because there's a good cause to be had there.
There's a good cause.
Commodus is portrayed as this total sadist.
Right. And it's like, are you not entertained? Like, that scene where he comes out, he's just whacking fools up. But to me, the attraction to that, it's not just the backstory, it's the actual action. Yeah. There's something to action that we like to see.
And for me, it's more than just Russell Crowe's character, Maximus, and the story that you were talking about. But just the idea that people's lives were this enslaved, this sport that resulted in death.
That's it. Yeah.
Is so. I was thinking about this, I think in the shower this morning. I don't know what brought this up, but I know. Get ready. I think it was from Game of Thrones. Did you watch the series?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like at some point there was this army for hire of just mercenaries.
Right.
And the commander of the force comes out, and he brings one of his soldiers forward, and he just commands him to kill himself.
Is that in Game of Thrones?
I think so. Or he chops off a limb of his own or something like that.
Just to show how...
I think he killed himself. Just the loyalty and the disregard for your own personal well-being.
Right.
And just the acceptance of the finality of death.
Yeah.
There was something about that was, such a...
Because the guy who gets under my skin of that is Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the devil reincarnated.
Yeah.
Like what he does. You remember?
I know. Yeah. He was a good...
he is a sadist. Like
I think one of the
end.
One of my criticisms of that show, maybe it's not a criticism, it's just a observation, is they have a few like devices that they use. Mm-hmm. One is the Deus Ex Machina device, which is they put the heroes in the most precarious position you could ever imagine. Right. And then at the last moment, something happens.
And they're saved.
Yeah. The other one that they use is they create a villain and they make them so reprehensible that when they finally kill them, the whole audience gets to revel in the feeling of
it's a release.
Vengeance.
Yeah, it's like, oh. Yeah. Like when his dog, because the whole time they make him such a terrifying guy with Bolton, Ramsay, just him, he, with Sansa, he's like raping, he's doing all this crazy stuff with her, and finally she's got the upper hand. His dogs are starving, and he's sitting there, in the dog cell, about to get eaten. And for some reason in that scene, you're going, well, maybe there's a call he has that's going to turn the dogs away or something, but that's not what happens. He gets munched, and you see that dog like gnawing on his face, and he's like, ugh, but then he's smiling when Jon Snow's beating the pulp out of him. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that was such a fantastic show, though. It really was. I mean, but I could see the devices you're talking about. Because, even in that one scene where he's standing there, Jon Snow takes the bait because he sees his brother get shot, right? By the arrow. Mm-hmm. He's like, go run to your brother. And he shoots him to start the battle. And Jon Snow takes the bait, goes out there. And then, I mean, he's getting stampeded by a whole, that shot is one of the most beautiful shots probably in, I think, film history. Because he's just standing there. He knows he effed up.
Totally outmatched.
Yeah, he's outmatched. He's sitting there. Yeah, remember? But then all of a sudden, the other guys come in and they save they save him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a device because that happens a lot.
Happens in a lot of things in general. You'll see it in a lot of movies. And it's a writing trick that...
It's got to be. Yeah, it's some kind of trick, right? Yeah. Yeah. But, but why are we so attracted to that? Is it because we want to see what it's like to die but not die?
Probably. I think we're so confronted with our own fear of death, that mystery that is just plagues us.
Right.
That there's maybe a catharsis to be able to have some exposure to it.
Because what you said earlier is that once the big monster's revealed, like I think of this movie, The Relic. Remember The Relic?
Just by name.
It's a cheeseball movie, right? But it was supposed to be this big horror movie, and they uncover this thing in the Congo or something, and they bring it back, and it's the Relic, and it's like it turns out to be this monster that eats everybody. The movie is fantastic until you see the Relic, and it's over. Mm-hmm. It's like you see death now. The guy's bleeding out, and it's over. Like the release is already, you know what I mean? There's no mystery anymore.
Once it happens,
it's over. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that kind of ties into Jaws, right? The whole thing with Jaws, the opening scene of Jaws. There's that famous documentary about it. Spielberg's talking about how they spent all this money on this animatronic, terrifying machine that looks like a life-size shark, great white, and it doesn't work like the first couple days of shooting, so they can't show it. Because in the original scene where it's like doo-doo-doo, and it's like you see the camera going through, you're supposed to see the shark, and you never see it. They couldn't get it going. They couldn't go in.
They had to omit it.
Yeah, and that's like a fact. They talk about that in the documentary, and that actually makes the movie that much more terrifying.
Yeah,
because you just see the girl go out and swim. She's drunk. She's having a good time. Her boyfriend's going to go follow her, but he passes out in the sand because he's a little too inebriated. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, she's munched, and you don't know. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a shark, right? It's like alluding to that. But the original scene was like the shark was going to come up like in the movie picture, where there's the picture of the girl swimming and the teeth coming up, right? It was going to be that. You were going to see all that. You were going to see it come and just munch her in half or something. And it just didn't work.
It was a happy accident.
It was a happy accident. And the other interesting thing about that is the music. When John Williams brought that to Steven Spielberg, he wanted to fire him. Because he's like, what is it? If you listen to Jaws, you hear like, dun, 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 it's like, what is this? Like some modern, expressive music that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And it becomes like legendary. One of the coolest themes ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. How that, like those weird accidents happen and they make like these iconic things. But that movie is terrifying. Jaws is terrifying. It is a terrifying movie. Mm. But the more, like when you start seeing the machine on the end of the boat, it's not as terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, a shark's not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like there's something that happens.
Yeah.
So, but you can't keep the mystery the entire time, because if it's just a mystery the whole time, then it's like, it's a mystery.
You got to play with it.
You got to play with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
yeah, I guess that's how life is a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's a mystery, and we just glean what feels like little epiphanies.
Yeah.
But, maybe to J.J. Abrams' point, the mystery is never
completely
revealed.
Yeah, because like, do we really know what happens to us when we die,
or why we're here,
what's
going on,
what is going on?
We want to know,
right?
We feel like we, figure out a thing or two here or there, but know that we'll never really get there.
Yeah, and I mean, you hear these great philosophies of like, oh, the point of life is to have responsibility or some kind of deep meaning for your life, but like, you're still gonna die.
What do you think about war as someone who was in the military?
It happened, and I was a master at arms in the Navy, and I went over to Puerto Rico, and we had a military installation, another base. It was called Vieques, and there was like this group. They were called like the Monchacheros or whatever. They were a terrorist organization that didn't like America, right? They were against America. They wanted America to leave because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. And we would get these constant attacks every night by them. And I mean, when I say attacks, I'm not saying suicide bombers. I'm saying guys, taking like a water balloon launcher and launching bricks at our trucks and ripping the fence down and like trying to infiltrate into the base and set up camp and just kind of mess up operations and cost the Navy a lot of money. So it was our job to go into that kind of semi-jungle and go get these guys. So I got to see some semblance of violence. Nothing too crazy. I mean, we never fight fair. That's the other thing about the U.S. military. We don't fight fair. We just go in and we come guns a-blazing, and that's why I believe we win a lot, more than we lose, right? But when we can, but
do you think
is it something that is necessary? Is war necessary? Yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Would the world look better if war hadn't been such a big ingredient in world history? Do you think everything would be better? Or do you think we're the fact that we've sort of lost the privilege to war in some respects because technology has gotten so advanced that I think World War One, I've heard it framed that one thing that made World War I special is that technology got to a point. That's why there was the trench warfare. Mm-hmm. What happened before that, war was more viewed as like a sport, and that there were all these wars that were happening in Europe, and it was considered to be an honorable thing to do. And the two armies came and they faced each other, and there was all these rules of engagement.
Right, ethics.
And it would be, it would be heroic and it would be brutal and people would die, but a lot of people would go home and they'd feel like a hero, and they had to have this whole thing they got, to be part of. And so some people in Europe were marching off to World War I expecting to have their glory, and the stakes were way ramped up because of machine guns and mustard gas and tanks and things like this, and it was like a whole,
and airplanes too, right?
Yeah.
Bombing and all that, yeah.
And then it just progressed, and now we're at a point where the U.S. only participates in like proxy wars, because it would just be it would be too gnarly for us to do a full frontal war. So you have all these small skirmishes between puppet states, and the big powers kind of line up behind him in different ways.
Right. Like what was happening right now.
Yeah. But
is it a necessary evil? Is war not? Is it?
Do we not have the same release? Because maybe there's something about us feeling part of a troop that is engaged in a battle for territory and security.
Yeah.
That is so ingrained into us that without it, it pops up in different ways.
I mean, I would take the notion that I think we've evolved enough and we've forced our evolution enough through money and technology that we should be able to purge those,
But does it need to come out in different ways?
Yeah, maybe it needs to come out in different ways.
That's why football is so popular.
Yeah. I would say maybe that's the driving factor behind that.
Or competition in business.
Right.
But there's a I think there's a lot of people out there that would just like to remove as much competition as possible.
Oh yeah.
Because it's unfair, and because if someone wins, that means someone has to lose.
Right.
And everyone gets a gold star, and
participation trophies.
And the idea of even the ruthless businessman is looked down on as someone who's greedy and capitalistic and has the wrong priorities in life. Really, we should be more focused on sharing and looking out for people and being nice and being kind, and not really valuing being competitive, being
aggressive,
formidable.
Yeah.
And without having that outlet, without feeling like we can receive some sort of encouragement or recognition for these type of attributes, but rather just being criticized for them as being mean or being unfair, you're not promoting these characteristics that, ultimately, if you're in a chimpanzee troop, you better hope that there's an alpha there who is going to, right?
Yeah, well, did you watch that new one about the chimps on Netflix?
Good, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that's amazing is the different setups. Like, there are some that have just one alpha.
Yeah.
But there are communistic, socialistic troops too.
Are you talking about
the new one, the new Netflix documentary?
Yeah. Well, that one just shows one or two chimpanzee troops that it.
Yeah, but they talk about how one is more of there's not just one alpha for the opposing team. It's more of a socialistic type of setup.
I think they've showed that there's been an alpha that is no longer an alpha, but still has high status.
Yeah, he has high status, but it's almost like an oligarch versus a one ruling.
They knew in that one, and who knows? It was this is 1, this is 2, this is 3.
Right.
3's vying for 2.
Yeah.
Here's the 5 and 6 are friends, and they'd like to get together and move past 4.
Right. And they're teaming up together.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating because it's in our nature is what that's saying.
Yeah.
Is what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And if you go right outside the studio, it is dog eat dog.
Mm-hmm.
There's natural ethics that are happening, animal ethics, whatever you want to call it, right?
And are we civilized beyond that point?
Yeah. Can we?
Or
can we transcend nature?
Or is it better that we try to integrate that in a way, and not to leave it by the wayside and just
I think we're fools if we do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible. Because you go into sexual repression and what that leads to, and
there's something about violence. I think, to kill something, even if it's just a spider
or a snake,
yeah, people have different sensitivities to that.
Right.
Yeah, and. I'm thinking about this. I don't know if I brought this up on the show before, but in To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a scene I like a lot. Gregory Peck, who, he's just kind of the archetypal man.
Yeah.
In that he's the dad, he's honorable, he's honest, he's just, he's strong. And early on, there's a rabid dog, and everyone's scared because this dog's going to hurt the children, and no one knows what to do. And he comes out, and you don't know this about him. Yeah. Puts his glasses down, he takes his gun out, and he kills the dog.
And he's known in town as being the best shot.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's interesting about that. Yeah.
And in that time, it's he does what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. He's not I don't want to hurt the dog.
Right.
And
Yeah. He doesn't want to see it suffer.
Maybe he doesn't like to shoot the dog.
Right.
But he's willing to bear that. There's another one. I think in Game of Thrones, it starts off with the king. King, was it Ned?
Yeah.
Ned Stark.
Ned Stark was not the king.
No, he was, but he was the head of the Stark family.
He became the hand of the king.
Hand of the king.
Yeah.
But I think there's a execution that needs to take place.
Right.
And he does it. As the king, he takes that burden onto himself.
It was a defector from the wall. They see the White Walkers, and like his whole little squad gets munched. It's like a horror. That's interesting about episode 1 in Game of Thrones. It's like a little horror movie, a mini horror movie. And he runs past the wall, and if you're on the Night's Watch and you defect, you're going to be executed immediately. And he's talking to Jon. Or if you're going to give a law, you have to be able to carry it out. If you're going to rule the land, yourself, like you can't just go, oh hey head cutter,
you do it, you take it on.
He pulls out his big ass sword and chops that dude's head off. And he takes that on.
He bears that guilt, the responsibility of ending a life.
So I mean I think there has to be an integration. There just has to be. I don't think we can. Maybe if we're a luminous beings floating around at the speed of light or something, we're not going to have to worry about that so much because there'll be excitement in other avenues, but we're not there yet.
And what's the best way to integrate it if you're maybe you shouldn't get on the football field and, for the average Joe, how are people integrating this aside from just getting fat in front of the TV screen watching their favorite football team on Sunday?
I mean,
in a way that's meaningful, that's personal.
Working out, jiu-jitsu, whatever, mixed martial arts.
Just going in the gym and doing tricep push downs, and looking at yourself in the mirror. Is that the same as,
playing a competitive sport? But I mean, really, I was talking to a guy the other day about this. Just I honestly believe this too, that any kind of sport or working out just in general, like you could just classify that all together. There's different versions of it, right? But, not just going to the gym and pumping iron, but doing like a basketball game or a pickleball or whatever, right? Like it is more, I think it's better than any, for recovering drug addicts and alcoholics, it's better than any SSRI or psychotropic medication on the planet. It's the best thing for depression. When you go play a basketball game, even if you lose, right, after the game's over, you're like, you put in some work, you were working with a team, right? There's this whole thing, and you're not thinking about you, and like there's this almost like it feels like a purge or something, like you got something out, this aggression out. And if you just sit around on the couch watching football, you're not going to be happy. I can't. I'm speaking for myself. So
this is maybe an unpopular opinion as it relates to people in recovery, but philosophy, I think about the competition that can be had in philosophical debate. Within recovery circles, I think no one likes to mention it, but there really is this ongoing game of who's got the most wisdom, who's got the best message, who's works the best program. And the ethic is like, I'm just another bozo on the bus, but it's to some degree it's like who can be the best bozo on the bus,
the best loser, and be dripping with humility.
It's described like we're all in this together, we're here to help each other, we're a tribe. But I think one of the healthy components of it is the competitive nature of a community like that.
And I mean, there could be a competitive nature in just like how many people have you helped. But that's so sick though, because that's so it's like so.
Is it though? I mean, think about those incentives. You have an incentive.
Think of like corrupt gurus.
Like
think of a corrupt guru who's like getting their wanker sucked, but they're practicing all this shit or they're preaching all this shit. They're not practicing any of it. I mean, they lead a lot of people off cliffs.
They want to see how many people they can help.
Right.
How many people they can influence.
I don't even know if it's help. It's like, I think it's influence. And
is there any way to...
They're like being mini Ubermenches. They're trying to bend the will of all these people around them.
And why is that bad? The people who have bent the will of, some of the most important people... Jesus bent a lot of wills. That's why he was so important. Is because he,
bent the nature of
reality for, most of the globe for.
But there'd be a lot of people that would say, argue that that's for the worst, and a lot of people would say that that's for the best.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in like secular America.
But is it better that we try than just like eat some potato chips and like be nice to everybody?
Yeah. I think it could be a path to being, when you're already self-centered, and then you start getting that kind of hit from being the big guy, the biggest bozo on the bus, and everybody's listening to you and going, "Oh my God, did you hear what Stites said?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear what J.D. said? Man, that guy's fucking connected."
Yeah.
And you start getting that, those rumors start coming back to you. Like, he's the guy.
So what's the danger in that?
The danger is probably more of a personal danger if you're that guy.
Because it makes you lazy. You get a sense of, maybe overconfidence.
You can rest on your laurels because you're the big guy.
You're not hungry anymore.
You're not hungry for it. You're not humble at all. You have no humility, right? Because you're trying to do it for the treat, for the cookie, and that's exactly that's like anti.
Why is the cookie there?
Well, you make the cookie maybe.
Yeah. If it's not there to be fought for, the reward is there as some, maybe it's built into the way we're wired. So it's an incentive to behave a certain way. So,
but why do so many, because we've both been down this road for a long time, and you do see a lot of that. You see a lot of these kind of guru-ish type of people in recovery circles. They go a little wonky.
They do.
And a lot of them end up really in bad places.
In recovery circles, it is, everyone is sort of in the business of becoming their own, guru franchise. Right? That's what you're aiming,
Like shaman. Like
we encourage people, why don't you help others?
Yeah.
Right?
Like
but what you're doing is you're just setting up shop.
Yeah, it's true.
I
was just having this conversation tonight about a corrupt guru,
And the business of being a guru, I think it oftentimes corrupts inevitably.
Yeah. It's like that power corrupts, like absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? That's a tough one because we've seen it. I know you've seen it. I've seen it.
But maybe you just lean into that.
I've lived it.
You try not to get corrupted, but eventually you will.
But you lived it too. Yeah. Right? You were like a circuit guy.
Yeah, I've been.
People were like, Stites, all hail Stites, right?
Yeah.
You were.
And it wasn't good for me.
It was horrible for you.
Yeah.
Because the tragedy that was right around the corner showed its ugly face and just swallowed you up.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. I thought, I'm all right.
But now think about this. If you weren't that kind of guru-ish type of person.
Yeah.
And you were just, a one amongst many, just trying to be the next, the best bozo on the bus, but not like the guru on the bus of the bozos. Would you have been clipped off by that?
We don't know.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know either.
Like, does anyone want to run that experiment?
Right.
Is anyone really? Yeah.
Yeah, because I had that too when I first, put the plug in the jug. And I got into a competition with a guy he's still a great friend of mine, right? We got sober the same year, 5 days apart, right? And we were like, these young guys, we had all our shit. You'll meet him sometime. He's a great guy, my boy Carl. And
shout out Carl.
Shout out to Carl. And we got in this like competition thing about how many guys we could help, how many guys we could sponsor. And it was like hilarious. We would check in with each other. Like,
where are you at?
Yeah, where you at? Like, oh, I'm at 8. I'm like, oh, dude, I just got 10. What's up, bro? Like, you're kind of dropping the ball. Like we just go back. It was
we've done that together.
I know, me and you've done that, right?
Yeah, hey, that guy just gave me a call.
Yeah,
that guy you were helping, he just hit me up. What?
Yeah, I think he wants to come over here, dude. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe I'm doing better than you are.
But see how much joy it brings us?
I know, it's funny because there's a competition. I think that's the one thing that I don't like is this persistent in our modern day society to try to kill competition. I don't think that's a good route to go. Mm-hmm. I don't think it can be all kumbaya. Yeah. I think we want to be pushing towards that, but we have to compete.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right? Like if me and you get on a pickleball court or on a ping pong table, we're going to start laughing. We're going to start talking shit. It's like this whole persona takes over, this competition thing.
Yeah.
Right? This like macho thing comes in because we're males. And yeah, I don't think we want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, what's a ping pong game where we're just,
just like, oh, I lost.
Let's just not keep score.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with like profit, right? With like a company, right? What's the point of having a company that doesn't make any profit?
Yeah.
What's the point? I'm asking you. What do you think? Like, there is no point. There can't be.
Explain that. Walk me through that.
I'm just thinking.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. I
part
think
of it is understanding what profit is,
right,
like, economically.
So it's like a surplus, right? Like, I buy this microphone for this much from some guy in some cheap deal. Somehow I buy in bulk, and then I sell it for, I put a margin on it. I make like 50 points. I sell it for half more than what I bought it for, or something, or double what I bought it for, and then in that process, I have to pay for the shipping, maybe the packaging of it, maybe the lights that are on that house where it is for sale, or the internet store that it's being sold on. I pay for all the infrastructure of it. And maybe I have an assistant, or I have people that work for me on a retail location.
But at the end of the day, there's more.
There's just there's like a 14% or a certain percent of profit.
Yeah, and what makes that? What is that profit representing?
It's representing abundance.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. It's like you're using your mind.
It's almost like alchemy. You're creating something from nothing, right?
Right.
All the resources that went in, add them all together, and it comes back with more
surplus
than was put. Yeah.
Right. And it all starts right here in your mind, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of an Ayn Rand kind of libertarian kind of thing, but I think it's a universal though. And if we can all just kind of create from our minds, and it doesn't need to be some crazy surplus, just enough, right? That it's like there's a surplus.
It's funny that a lot of
worthwhile.
The abundance people are probably not the capitalistic people.
I know.
But they are. Yeah.
Like, that's capitalism.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
spiritual capitalism.
It's spiritual capitalism. We'll have to play around with that sometime, maybe, because that's an interesting topic. I think that would be a good thing to try to break apart. But yeah, I was talking with a guy the other day about that. Like, if you have a store, if you have a business and there's not a profit, what's the point?
Yeah, you should probably close the business.
But
a lot of times you have to run at a deficit for a while, right? Until you get everything organized.
Right.
And that's why the first 5 years of a business,
you're not making much money
because you're just trying to catch up to your initial investment and hopefully get the well pumping.
Right.
Yeah.
But
if you can't, then you might as well close the well, because
what's the point?
Yeah.
And some people, like, they want to rail against that. They want to say, no, like, should we all just be autonomous animals,
just breaking even,
serving each other? I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing, but that's
on the flip side, it's just growth begets more growth.
Right.
We've done that, is where if we get more money, then we can have more food, so we can feed more people who can reproduce more, so that
right.
And then but you can see at some point it becomes a bit absurd, because then the more mouths you have to feed, then the more you have to produce. So then the more,
Right.
And it's like that. I think about that. Someone pointed out with work, for instance, if part of my job is answering emails, if I think that if I can answer all my emails, then I'll be done with my work, I'm mistaken, because what I've done is I've just produced a lot more work for myself.
Right.
Because a lot of those emails are going to get responses that need to be responded to.
Right.
And the more I do that, the more I become known to the people who send me emails as a person who responds to emails.
Right.
So I'm more likely to get more hits as a result of that.
Right. So you're asking that to come into your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Which would also be in line with some of these law of attraction.
Yeah, of course.
Kind of concepts.
Yeah.
But that more work produces more work.
Right.
And that's exponential.
Right. And so to me, it's really funny when you see, and it's usually these younger kids that haven't lived life that to its fullest yet, and they want to rail against capitalism. They want to say it's the evil whatever. And it's to me, it's like, and they want to get rid of competition. Like, really? Like, how do you measure yourself if you don't have competition?
Yeah. Money's another one too. I think money's hard to understand.
Yeah,
because it's paper, or oftentimes not. It's a numerical, figure that is representative of work. There's a marketplace that sort of averages out all these different resources, and it's, but I think to a lot of people, especially, money can just be printed, why don't we all just share everything? And what's the big deal? You know, why don't we just forgive all the student debt? And it's not real anyway. So like, let's just, you know, like we don't need any of this.
It's sad that these ideas have been and they're kind of newer ideas about money. I mean, most societies go through this, but money is just the reflection of value.
Yeah, and money.
Something.
What about money is the root of all evil?
That's such a horseshit.
It's interesting that there's not more of, because I think that there's a worship of money that can be pathological.
Of course.
But there's not just a respect for that our relationship with money can be pathological, it can be deranged, it can be perverse.
Of course, yeah.
But what you don't see a lot of is just a healthy respect for kind of the miracle of money.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like what would life look like without it?
Right.
You know? And how to, you know, just there's an awe to it. It's one of the most fundamental, I think, institutions we have, aside from like language, time, money. Some of these principles are like the fabric of our known experience.
Yeah. It's almost like the harbinger of virtue itself.
Yeah.
Money is, at least. And I think saying it's the root of all evil is just a cheap. Where does that even come from?
I don't know. Is that a biblical thing or?
It's not a biblical thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's maybe it. I don't know, but I can see how it can be pathological. Of course, just like sex is pathological, but you got to have sex. You know what I mean? Like it's like, of course we can pervert and get all crazy on shit, but yeah, I just went down this deep rabbit hole about why Ayn Rand has this thing called the money paper, and she talks just about that. She takes that saying money is the root of all evil, and then she starts going, well, what is the root of money? And then it's like, what is the root of money? Oh, virtue and value.
Yeah.
And hard work.
That's the root of all evil.
Yeah, that's the root of all evil.
Value.
Value, yeah. Hard work.
Yeah.
Creating new things.
Yeah.
That's the root of all evil. Really?
Yeah. Interesting. Life denying. Not life affirming.
Right, exactly. So I think
philosophy there.
Yeah, and yeah.
Mostly our relationship with money is probably stressful because it represents life and security for us.
Right.
And it goes as fast as it comes. And so there's this.
Well, and there's also this idea that the people that are not able to hold on to money are lacking in virtue in something, right? Because there is a discipline to being able to accumulate money and hold it properly, and not go invest like a trust fund or whatever, however it comes to, or a profit that you make from a business into some stupid Ferrari or some stupid shit, and then lose it all, basically. Just give it right back.
And there's 12-step programs like Debtors Anonymous.
Yeah.
That really, I think they get into this, you know, really that your pocketbook is really tied to your spiritual fitness.
It is.
And a lot of the people who have a hard time with money is because of limiting beliefs,
of course,
and because of, you know, just it's connected to their own self-esteem and their value of themselves,
right? Yeah,
and that the only way to correct it is not just to budget better and to work harder, but to really get down to some of these wires and how they're
causes
crossed.
And conditions.
Yeah,
no, of course, yeah. So it's funny because I think for a long time of my life I did think that. I was like, oh, money is the root of all evil, and it's like, no, that's bullshit. It's bunk.
What that means is I wish I had more money.
That's all that means.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's like,
that's it.
It's lame out on more money because
and
I like it so much.
And the funny thing is you can either get money. There's like kind of two paths you can go. You can either go plunder it.
Yeah.
You can either go try to take the money.
Yeah.
Right. In some crazy, some way through taxes or whatever it is. Or you can go and try to create it.
Yeah.
You can try to create that profit. And then that surplus comes.
And that's probably the difference between like muscle that you've built and, muscle that you've. I mean, you can see how money that's maybe not properly earned can really derange people's psyches.
Of course. Yeah.
I know people that, very personally that you can tell there might be, even though on paper still probably successful, and even if they made bad money decisions for the rest of their lives, would probably be more successful than a lot of people.
Right.
But it might be that it's just been too twisted.
Yeah, they've pathologized their money making and their what they do with their money.
Yeah,
they're not. Yeah,
there's no way back.
They're
really.
Spiritually sick.
Yeah.
From it, and
probably the same way that the spiritual guru is inevitably falls victim to corruption.
Right.
So
and then there's that other saying, more money, more problems. And that's also a true statement as well. Like that I think that is a true statement.
That is true.
Yeah, because when you see like a high, we have high bottom and low bottom drunks, right? So a high bottom drunk is sometimes a lot harder to deal with, right? Because at least like a low bottom, paper bag, drunk or heroin addict, right? Or a fentanyl addict that's living on the streets, they are at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Like there's no bottom below that. Mm-hmm. Death is the next thing, right? But with somebody that comes from like, a wealthy family, and there's been a lot of therapy thrown at them in different rehabs and treatment centers and this and that, they're like mentally more twisted. It's like because they've been, I don't know why that is. That's another topic to kind of. There's a lot to unpack
pick apart there.
Yeah, because I mean, the paper bag drunk is still twisted as fuck.
And still egotistical and all of that.
Entitlement and all that stuff.
But probably the more resources you have, just the more connected you are to things.
Right.
Whether that money is money that you earned or whether it was inherited to you.
Right.
All that money is attached, to other people in one way or another, and relationships and businesses and, and so it's just a more complicated picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. We should do one on money.
We should.
So that's probably good. We went all over the place today.
Yeah.
We're like,
as we usually do.
We went from death and why we're attracted to horror films and death and why we picked that to money.
Yeah, we got there somehow.
I don't know how we got there.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. You got anything else to say? No.
Nope.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night. See you.